before you do start working in 13 on projects, that everybody has access to that data. All right. I'm going to jump over now. Let's start a little bit, start talking a little bit about the CAD Data Manager application. This is an update of the old Cadillac program. I kind of cleaned up the name and just went with something a little more straightforward, calling it the Data Manager, which was the original name for this program 4 or 5 years ago when we first started using it, when it was developed by our local reseller, CAD Masters here. This version's been updated now. It will support the 2009 through 2013 versions of the AutoCAD applications. Once we start working in 14, there will be an update to this to recognize the 2014 versions. The icon, we changed the icon just to make it a little different so you can recognize it. And it's just basically a computer monitor, a little black monitor, and that will be on your desktop. All right, so let me jump over to that here. There it is. There's CAD Data Manager. So this is what the interface looks like for CAD Data Manager. It looks just like Cadillac and everything that we're used to. There are a few additional tabs, and I'll be going through those in just a little bit. Plus, we've added a couple, some new features or functionality to it based on user feedback, and a couple of things the way I like to work. I added in some features to meet my needs, which is one of the nice things about developing the program myself, is I get to make it do what I want it to do. All right, so if you do find that there are items in here that you'd like to change or update, let me know, and I can gladly look at how easy it would be to add those features into future releases. All right, so let's start off. I'm going to kind of jump back and forth here a little bit. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so I'm going to start off on the Edit Files tab. Main new features for this tab is the one I like the most is I can now save and import my project list to a file. So you ever have where you lose your N drive, you open up CAD Data Manager, open up Cadillac, it can't find any of your jobs and they all disappear. Well, you can now save your list and then reload the list. And it's really nice for people who travel to multiple offices because the N drive is going to be different in each office. So I'll show you how I've set mine up to work in different offices. All right. Other feature I've added is a way to link a version of CAD or a version of Civil 3D more specifically to a project so that a project knows I'm being done in 2013 or I'm being done in 2011. I added that in because there's a lot of problem when you start working with multiple versions of Civil 3D that if you accidentally open up a 2011 drawing and save it in 2013, there really isn't any clean way to get that file back to 2011 other than going and getting the archive or a recovery off a tape through your IT group. So I've added an option into the CAD Data Manager where you can assign a version to a project and then it will alert you when you're using the wrong version. We've also added in a recover option, so you crash, you get the drawing recovery file. Instead of having to open up another drawing, we can do the recover right from CAD Data Manager. Another requested functionality was displaying the file version just as a way to kind of keep track and help us watch and make sure we are using the right version, so I'll show that. And then just some workflow items I've added in. You can now double-click on files to open, whereas in the past you had to go click the Open button. I can now just do it as simply with a double-click. And then we also added a link to where you can open up a project folder directly in Windows Explorer. So let me jump back into our CAD Data Manager here. So let me kind of show you some of those. So I talked about the project list. Right now, here's my default list. This is everything I've been working on, all my training data sets. But say I want to make sure I capture that. There's a couple new buttons up at the top. This first one will export a project folder list, and I'm just going to come in there and pick. I already got what I did. It's my TR projects here, and I've been throwing the date on there so I know which one it is. So I'll save that now. So what happens then if I go to another office, I can then come in here and say, well, import my project list, and maybe I'm going to work in San Diego. So I've got a few San Diego jobs on here, and I'll click that, and now it's showing me just my SD projects here. Or I can come in when I go, oops, wrong button. Pay attention. There we go. I've got a Sacramento set of projects that I've been working on, so I can come in here and it'll show me just those. And then when I get back to my office, I can come in here. Maybe I want to work on my training projects again. Oops, I hit the export. I want import, and I pick my training, and then I'll open that one up, and it will reset me back to those. So it's just a nice utility, especially for people with laptops, people who travel, that they can get that project list recovered fairly quickly. So, once you get these set the way you want, export it, save it to a file. That way, if you ever work offline or you lose your end drive and it deletes them all, you don't have to go back in one at a time and add them all back in. All right, so that's the save and import project list. Linking a project to a version of CAD. So I've got this job here. This is the project I used for the 2011 upgrade, and we'll see down at the bottom that I've actually associated that with 2011, and that is done through the project folder control button here. And you can either click that button or you can right-click on the job, go to folder control. Up at the top here we have a description. I can say this is Civil 3D an upgrade. And this is actually added to the project file, so this is for all users in your office. We'll actually see this change. And then down here is the new field where I can say, okay, this is 2011 Civil 3D. If you don't want to associate with a version, you just set that to the blank field, and it'll then ignore that. But I'm going to set this to 2011, click OK. All right, so now my description will show up down here in the status bar, and then right here it shows me that these are linked to 2011. So let me just drill in here, and we'll come into this messy project here, and I'm going to switch over to 2013. All right, hitting this button, it re-added my list. That's a little bug. It'll clean itself up when I reload it. So I picked 11. I want 13, and I want the Imperial. So now if I try to open the file, let me go to a small file here. And we'll just grab that one. So my project knows I'm working with 2011. I've selected 13. When I go to open the file, I'm going to get this warning saying, hey, this project's associated with 2011. You're attempting to open it with 13. Okay. I give you the option to continue here. Yes, I recognize that I'm using a different version, but 13, I'm going to open it in 13, maybe and do a save as. That's fine. Really, most times you're going to say no, and then you want to go back in and select the proper version of Civil 3D. And then it'll proceed without providing you that warning. It's just we've had enough people working in the past year, working in both 11, 12, and 13. We've had a couple of jobs where we had some oopses, where somebody wasn't paying attention and they were working in 12 on one project, they jump over to another project, and they continue to open things up with Civil 3D 2012. So hopefully that'll help you keep your Civil 3Ds in line. All right. Other options on here, you'll see there's a toggle now where we can open the file in recover mode. So if I grab, let me start sorting by size here. So if I grab a file, open and recover, what it does is it'll open up a blank drawing, and then it uses a script to run the recover command on the selected drawing. It'll then run recover. And it just makes that process of when you crash and need to recover a file a little bit quicker. All right. I'm going to leave that turned off. I don't think I need to show you that. Another option is people want to see file versions. So what we can do is as we click on files, CAD Data Manager will actually open the file and search for version information. And the base AutoCAD version information is real easy to find. It's at the beginning of the file. But to get the specific versions for Civil 3D, we actually have to search through the file to try to find that information. Because of that, this slows the CAD Data Manager way down. Especially, I find it's really slow if your drawing has surfaces. So let me go ahead and click on that. So you can see that one's an 09, that one's an 09, that one's an 09. That one's unknown. So some of the files, it can't find the data. This probably was never opened in Civil 3D, so it couldn't find it. This file, until I get my preview, it's still searching through that file. It's not a very large file, but it sure didn't like that. So this slows things way down. See, so now I got to wait because I grabbed that 112 gig or 122 megabyte file. That was a mistake on my part. So you can see it slows things way down. Only use this intermittently when you need to look at things. Other than that, you probably definitely want to leave that toggled off. It just, we had some people that was a need, that as they're working on a job, they need to kind of query the files and see what's going on. Occasionally, it does not release the file, and you will AutoCAD will open the files as read-only. So if that happens, close down AutoCAD, clear this toggle, and then open your file again. So you can see with that cleared, it's definitely a lot quicker in terms of selecting files. All right, a couple other items new on this tab is I can now open a file just by simply double-clicking on it. So I double-click on it, it's going to fire off Civil 3D, open up my drawing for me. All right, so bear with it as it's doing that behind the scenes here, but I do have the Civil 3D going up. There we go. All right, and then the last item in here is if I want to, boy, I get a lot of errors. Oh, that's an IRS project. All right. So just kind of show you that. So that's nice, so that way I'm not having to jump back and forth all the time. I can just double click on the file. We'll talk about this a little bit later. This is a feature of having multiple versions of Civil 3D on the same computer. We get these phantom errors that don't tell you anything. They're benign. They occur after the program is closing. Your drawing's been saved. No data is lost. You just have to click the OK button on the thing. All right, the last thing I'm going to show in this tab is I can right-click now, and there is in the shortcut menu now, we can jump over directly to Windows Explorer, and you'll see it'll open up in that folder. So if I need to copy some files or clean out my directory, it's just a nice quick way to get to that location. All right, so that's the Edit Files tab. Recent Work tab really has the same new features. I can do the Recover option, the File Version option. We can now double-click on file names, and we can open in Windows Explorer. And that one's just slightly different if I go into the Recent Work. Say I come in and I pick that file there, right-click, open it in Windows Explorer. Not only will it open that folder in Windows Explorer, but it'll actually select that file for you, so you can find, I'm looking for files right near that one. It helps you locate where you are. So that's just a neat little functionality that people have requested. Can I get into that from CAD Data Manager? All right. So now we got some new tabs. All right. Prior to this version of CAD Data Manager, project setup was done two ways. You either went through Standards Manager, selected a database, did the project setup there, or you do what I see most people do is they go into Windows Explorer and they start making folders. My issue with that is the problems we're having is people didn't know standard folder names, which breaks a lot of our automation. Okay, it should be CADD for the CAD folder, and then master is spelled M-A-S-T-E-R, not masters or whatever the other 10 variations I've seen in the past couple of years. So I thought, well, let's help people out. Instead of making them type all these in, I took the project setup functionality from Standards Manager and moved it into the CAD Data Manager, which kind of makes sense. That's going to be this project setup tab. It only makes projects on the N drive, which is where all your projects should be. And I'm just going to give it a name that I know I haven't used. All right, and you can browse. You can select an existing project folder on the N drive, and this will then create additional directories in that folder. So if somebody only put in the job name or the job number in a couple of folders, we can use this to finish them out. Okay. At this point, we could put in the project description. Demo, and I have the option here again to assign a version if I want to assign a version to that. So I'm going to say, well, this one maybe will be working in 2013, and then you select the project folder template. And this is actually reading the exact same file that the CAD coordinators had set up for Standards Manager. So it is reading that same file. So I'll just say I'll pick on the basic. Here's a preview what it's going to look like. There's the folder. I need a little bit more information, so I'm going to go over to the detailed. So the detail is going to give me a little bit different configuration. These are office specific, so you are going to have slightly different directory structures based on the way your office has customized this. All right, so once you get your folder preview, looks fine. The last option here, not only can I create the projects, but hey, while you're at it, add it back to my Edit File tab project list. So I'll go ahead and turn that on. I'll hit Create. It's done building them. I come over here now, and we'll see my demo projects now at the top, and I can now come in, and I can start creating files and adding my data to that project. All right, so that is the Project Setup tab. Other new tab is the IRS tab, and for those of you who are not familiar with that, that stands for InterRegional Services here at NALTE, and that means it's a project that's being worked on by multiple offices. And we have an old program that I wrote about 8 years ago called the IRS Master File Manager, which is written in VB. It's old. It uses text files. It's very slow. I've updated it now and incorporated it into the CAD Data Manager, and it's using a SQL Express database off a server here in the corporate server offsite facility that allows access to all offices. Being a SQL database, it is 10 times faster, 50 times faster than using text files to manage all this information. The intent of the program is to manage master drawing files across multiple offices, and it uses a database and a check-in, check-out process to keep track of where the files are located, who is editing which file. This new version also added in some functionality for managing the Civil 3D data shortcut files. So if you create a data shortcut file, we can then make that file available to the other offices so that when they work on the project, they can then data reference your alignments and your surfaces. So let me briefly show that here. So that's in this IRS tab. We do have one project that we're working in Sacramento and San Jose, kind of our beta project to kind of test out the workflow. All right, so I'll expand that. And I've tried to set this up so it's just like the Edit File tab. All right, but you don't get folders. You get, based on the database, it's going to show you which files are checked in, meaning that you can check them out. It shows which files San Jose has, which files Sacramento has, and then which files I have here in the corporate office. And right now, nothing is checked out. If I go look in one of my sample projects that I did, we'll see as we come through here that there are some files checked out to the offices. And the way this works is when they're checked in, they are in the master folder. When you check them out, it copies them to your working folder, and the database knows that your office has it. All right, just some other things on here. If I come in and I'll look at this I'll look at the profile file because I know they have some data here. It shows you who the last person was that modified it, when they modified it, and what they did. So we have some transaction history. I can view the complete history for a file. Brings up a window so I can see everything that's done to a file. Okay. So real nice way to keep track of that. So let me come back into my play project here. So maybe I made some edits to this file. So when I select it, you'll see when I'm in my office and it knows that I'm working in the corporate office, it shows up down here under my username. If I select user data, if I travel and I work in, if I go down to San Jose, I can switch and say I'm working in San Jose today. Let me keep myself in Sacramento. And then the project data list while I'm down here just shows me which offices, who the project team is. We do have some role options here which we're not using. We're just kind of playing with some functionality. And then there's an email toggle that when somebody updates a file, it actually sends an email to the team indicating that such and such file has been updated. It will include the description of what was done, and it's a real nice utility to make people aware of what the workflow or what the progress is in a project. Do I need to update my data references or my XREFs because something had changed? Okay. If I update it, same kind of utility we had in the old IRS Master File Manager. You have to put in a description in order for the buttons to become valid. Okay. A few other options on here now. Synchronize. What that does is that will go through and look at the master file and compare it to the versions in my office. So this is looking in Sacramento compared to my corporate server. It sees that this file's out of date, so I can hit the synchronize button. It will then update it, and I now have the current version on my server. Okay. Same kind of thing. Let me actually switch over to this job here. For data shortcuts, I have to tell it to read them all, but it'll read all the data shortcuts on my server and then read them on the master server. One of the things we're finding in the workflow is that I'm working on it in the working folder, that when I create my data shortcuts, it's there, but we really want them all pointing to the master, so we just have a button here that'll go through and quickly edit all the shortcut paths to point to the version in the master. And then I can tell it to upload those to the master office to be available for everybody else. I can then come to my master list here and then say, well, synchronize and copy these down to my server so I can use data shortcuts created by others in other offices. So I'm not going to show too much more here. Just kind of want to make that aware of that. And then the final tab here, we'll just jump on just because I could. I threw in a little HTML viewer, a little web browser page, and we've given you just an automatic link to the CAD support page, just again to promote that, make you aware of it, make that readily available. All right, so that is everything on the CAD Data Manager. So we talked about the support tab.